I'm so curious what was going through your mind when you heard Jamie Dimon's response.
Look, when Jamie Dimon and I are in exactly the same place, it's because we have a serious problem in this country. And that is a part of the financial system is being used by terrorists, by drug traffickers, by rogue nations in order to launder money, move money through the system and finance their illegal activities. But keep in mind on this one, it wasn't just Jamie Dimon. We had a long, long table with the CEOs of all of the largest banks in this country. And when I asked the question, should the rules that apply to their banks, and by the way, also apply to stockbrokers and gold traders and credit card companies and credit unions and all the other financial transactors, should those same rules to deal with drug trafficking and terrorism financing and rogue nation financing, should the same rules be put in place? Every single one of them said, absolutely. So what this tells me is it's time for Congress to act.
Let me ask you, beyond Congress acting, there's a big question mark over whether the SEC is going to act on whether, for example, a Bitcoin ETF will ultimately get approved, which would expand access for Americans all over the country, potentially, to invest in Bitcoin. You've probably watched the price of Bitcoin has risen quite materially, even in the past several months, in large part on the back of that expectation. You know Gary Gensler very well. Do you have any expectation that something like that would take place, and would you support it?
So I don't want to speculate on what the SEC is doing here. I really want to draw an important distinction, and that is the SEC principally is talking about regulation, the kind of monitoring the platforms, the markets, make sure that there's adequate consumer protection, an issue that is built into the DNA of the SEC. It's an important thing to do. It's absolutely something they should do. What I'm talking about is the law enforcement aspect of this. It's not over at the regulatory agencies. What I'm talking about is the part of the system that makes sure that banks are not being used for terrorist financing, for example. You know, we have something called the Bank Secrecy Act, which is how banks are required to monitor certain kinds of transactions that go through the system. It was written in the 1970s following 9/11. The law enforcement folks went back, looked at what had happened, figured out how the financing had made it through the system, and that's the last time that Congress updated the Bank Secrecy Act. What we need to do is we need to update it again because there's a new threat out there. It's crypto, and it is being used for terrorist financing. It is being used for drug trafficking. North Korea is using it to pay for about half of its nuclear weapons program. We can't allow that to continue.
I'm so